Well, it's a privilege and honor to be here. And I know everybody says that at the beginning of a talk, but I really mean that because my journey working with women has been a long one. I've had my life has been rich with visionaries and with change agents and thought leaders. I have had the privilege to work in several movements, environmental, social, and the most exciting was the natural products movement. I had the opportunity to be on the ground floor many decades ago. That was back in the day when anybody involved in natural products was considered a wacko, a weirdo, a fringy kind of a person. But we knew we had something. And we knew we had to professionalize it in order to make it a viable industry. And at that time, it was mostly men. Duh. And there were a few women in the industry, and we banded together to support each other and help each other build our businesses and become part of the business side of the movement. We started a group called AWIN, American Women in Natural Foods. And one of the things we recognized is that we had to be more inclusive, and we had to work across demographics, and we had to stop just preaching to the converted. We also realized that in the 80s, remember that Nike commercial, Just Do It? I had a light bulb when I saw that, and I realized we were selling products and that what we needed to be doing was selling a lifestyle. We had a story, and we needed to tell that story. And once the industry started to change their packaging and their promotion, and they started to tell the story, it started to grow. And then in 1991, I started my own company, Natural Network International, and it was to foster, work with people in products of integrity that foster a socially just, healthy, and regenerative world. I was using that word way back then. What was I going to say? I believe we're on the precipice of a global movement, a new one, and it embodies those very values that I've dedicated my life to. And as I'm so pleased to hear so many of you talking about collaboration today, because moving from competition to collaboration is something we must do, and I see it really happening. What we need, though, is we need a new lexicon, we need a new story, and we need a new narrative for the new millennium. And I've kind of hooked on to hemp because I think that hemp gives us a very inclusive narrative that we can all jump into, and it's a place, a movement we can all find ourselves in. Okay, the American hemp movement. Did it change? Oh, I didn't change it here. I can't see. Okay. The U.S. is steeped in hemp history. From our first American flag, wagon trains had hemp covers. The Declaration of Independence was done on hemp. Henry Ford built his first car, his first prototype with hemp. And even the Bible today is still made on hemp paper, very fine Bibles. It's a resilient and renewable resource, and it was a staple crop in the United States until FDR, signed the Marijuana Act into play in 1937, and that was sort of the end of as we know it. But then the war came, and we started the hemp for, that's my job to do that. The Hemp for Victory campaign was launched in 1942, 1943. We lost our access to hemp fiber. The Japanese cut off our supply lines to the Philippines. And so they started a movement, and the government gave hemp seeds to the 4-H clubs to propagate. And then the following year, they gave them to 20,000 farmers. And Congress started the War Hemp Industries Corporation and the Commodity Credit Corporation. 43 processing plants were built, 20,000 farmers got involved, tons and tons of hemp were grown for parachutes, rope. It was a dedicated movement, and as you know, many of the men were at war, so women were really building industry. They took a lot of the men's jobs. And it was a movement even back then. And to this day, we remain the only G7 nation to prohibit the cultivation under federal law nationally. But yet we're the world's largest consumer of hemp products. As you can see, the figures here are impressive. 800 million in the US in 2017, and we're slated to go to 2.5 billion by 2022. Okay, and the growth is being driven by consumers. Again, we know what we want, and it's a movement. And movements really excel when we start cross-pollinating, cross-sector. We start talking and networking, just like you all are doing here. Agriculture, the hemp movement, agriculture farmers really want to grow hemp. And not only is it a rock star of carbon sequestration, there's a lot of money to be made in it. And what you may not know is that women have become the fastest growing sector of the agricultural farming industry, 30% rise in farm operators in the US in the past few years. So that's pretty exciting. Back to the land. And then here we are at climate change. Hemp is the rock star of climate change. It acts as a carbon sink, and it is scientifically proven to sequester carbon better than any forest or any commercial crop on the planet. And replanting it continues to absorb CO2. Food, fiber, fuel, health. Now, y'all probably know a lot of the products that can be made from hemp, from foods and dietary supplements, body care, clothing, hempcrete. I mean, we can go on. They say there's about 25,000 products that can be made from hemp identified already. Now, we have some rocky roads ahead here. The politics, okay? And the politics and policy are really challenged by a lack of not only consumer education, not only political education, but consumer education. People don't know the difference between hemp and marijuana, and they just don't know what's going on. Okay? The cool thing is that it's the beginning of a very great bipartisan solution, and the bills that have been proposed for the past few years in the House and the Senate have been proposed by a Democrat and a Republican, usually a very liberal Democrat and a very conservative Republican. So that's pretty fun. And here's your Jared Polis in Colorado holding Michael Bowman's, brought this hemp flag to Congress, and they actually flew that flag on the Capitol of the US on 4th of July in 2012. It was made by Growing Warriors, which are veterans in Kentucky who want to get back to the land, and they get the seeds from the University of Kentucky, they grow hemp, and they make American flags. And then just recently in April, our friendly face there, isn't he gorgeous? I mean, how can someone go through life? I have to make a comment. But to his credit, he introduced the Hemp Farming Act of 2018. It has not passed. There's a lot of work ahead in order to pass it. And it's backed by, again, a bipartisan coalition, both in the House and the Senate. And we need to build an empowerment movement around the farm bill that already exists. We need to work strategy in states to help move the policy forward for legality and to move the Hemp Farming Act forward as well. It's time to reignite the Hemp for Victory campaign, okay, and launch a lucrative 21st century hemp economy in the United States. And so far, there's been a group of us who have been working over the past couple of years with associations, foundations, all these different groups here. As we did in the natural products industry, as so many of you are cross-pollinating to find the stakeholders who are already pioneering the work that we want to see. And then we have some key initiatives to change behaviors as well. And our mission really is to support the reintroduction, nothing short of this, of an industrial hemp as an agricultural crop in America, leading to the development of a multi-billion-dollar hemp industry. It's a national campaign, both relevant and timely, and it has very powerful touch points. If that's not unifying, I don't know what can touch all of those points. History's on our side, and we stand to provide a very unifying agenda during what are very polarized times right now. Did that move? Okay, whoops. And this is just a little bit of what we've laid out that we want to do to move this forward? And we've sort of modeled it after the natural products industry, which had the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act and the organic standards, where industry and stakeholders got together and they dropped their competitive edge for a while until they were able to realize their common goals. They saw that the vision for common goals was greater than the competition. So they did what? They collaborated, right? Okay, so we will consider the campaign of victory only when every farmer, entrepreneur, and every state has the legal right to benefit from the cultivation of hemp. Okay, so education, reaching this market potential hinges on political, industrial, as well as consumer education and awareness. However, I believe to be truly successful, this campaign and this type of education must embody and be driven by the values that move us from competition to collaboration. Otherwise, it'll be just another industry. And this is a movement, it's a lifestyle, it is a psychology, it's a trend that belongs as part of the fabric of our lives, okay? And let's see, let's move on to the next one. Okay, this is really important. Rosie, who knows Rosie the Riveter? Okay, she was the iconic woman that represented women in the war effort during World War II. And she represented the women in the factories that held down the jobs. And we see her today as an iconic vision of how we can embody this moving forward. So I invite you all to be a regenerative visionary. I invite you all to participate in an investment that will not only impact the current economy, but generations to come. It's your investment. Women have a multiplier effect. So join us in finding your spot in the American hemp movement. Thank you.